Today's episode is presented by Veyer. Veyer was founded with the goal of building an affordable everyday wristwatch that blends tasteful design with extreme durability and functionality. Veyer returns a sense of dignity to affordable wristwatches and are built to last. Veyer is a true American watch company specializing in both quartz and automatic watches. Veyer is offering our listeners 15% off if you use the code PODGO15. Go to VeyrWatches.com to learn more and get your new timepiece today. That is VAER watches.com. And again, that code is PODGO15 for 15% off. Now, on to episode 70 of The Next Best Bet. We have some MLB, some NBA, and some NHL, and an apology for the brief hiatus. Episode 70 should have been out on Thursday, but it's coming out on this Monday.
Yeah, it happens. Work sometimes gets in the way of stuff, and it's unfortunate, but we're back, and we're back for Madden week. It finally feels like the NFL's in not in full swing, but really picking up, Higgins.
Yes, it really is. And again, this is Jake Higgins with Brett Levy, as always, on the Next Best Bet. And let's take a brief look at how we did in episode 69. I went 1 for 2. Brett, you went 2 for 1. My one win was the Avs versus Coyotes over 5.5. Now, we have some hockey later on in this episode. That's not the game you're going to find me on, though. My other two losses were Pacers +4 and Houston Astros -1.5.
And then I won the Boston Celtics -6.5. They actually swept the Sixers. The Yankees over 4.5 on last Monday hit as well. And then I lost my White Sox Tigers over, but I still like the play because the White Sox are still scoring runs every day, Higgins. So even though I lost, I still think White Sox overs are in play here.
And you haven't been able to take your Yankees over in a while because that's been postponed against the Mets right now.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. The Yankees Mets series was postponed for COVID reasons. So hopefully the Mets. I haven't heard any more positive tests from the Mets, so hopefully they can get back on the field Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens or if they do get postponed a little bit longer. Let's jump into Beginners Boulevard. We're going to talk about the middle, and that's where you take a spread bet on both sides with a chance to potentially cash on both. So let's say basketball, Miami Heat versus Indiana Pacers. You would take the Pacers +7.5. You would take the Miami Heat -5, and then you have a 2.5 point window that you could potentially cash both of those bets in.
Yeah, another way to do the middle is take the Milwaukee Bucks, for instance, -13.5. Now, this has actually been a trend over the last two games, Higgins. The Bucks have gotten off to such hot starts that spread by halftime is somewhere in the mid 20s. And you come back around and you take the Nets, and then all of a sudden you bang bang double up with the live little spread there, and that's a trend I've been kind of keeping my eye on, and I'll see what happens in this elimination game on Monday.
Using some live betting to take the middle. I like it. I like that strategy. Let's jump into the MLB, though, because we have some IL updates. The Rays, Nick Anderson, he's headed to the IL, and man, their pitching troubles just continue.
Nine Rays pitchers are on the IL. That is alarming.
That it's tough to get the wins. It's tough to have the season that you were hoping to have when the guy on the mound is continually finding himself on the IL. And then the Giants, they designated Hunter Pence for assignment. Now he's getting up there in age a little bit. Hopefully he doesn't have to stay in assignment for too long and he's on his way back.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. This really could be the end for Hunter Pence. He's a World Series champion, All Star a few times. Really good player over his career. Not a Hall of Famer, but very good player, and definitely a player that was in the majors for a lot of my lifetime. It'll certainly be weird to watch Major League Baseball without a Hunter Pence in there.
I agree. That name is very familiar with me when watching baseball over the past few years. And another team in the NL West that has gotten a lot of or quite the hot start recently is the San Diego Padres. 5 of the past 6 games, they have hit grand slams, Brett.
The Slam Diego Padres, but the Texas Sweep Padres, I mean, they are just on fire.
I'd say it all stems from Fernando Tatis Jr. hitting that grand slam on Monday and people telling him to apologize for breaking an unwritten rule in baseball. You know what? If it's unwritten rules are unnecessary. If the rule was necessary, it would be written down.
I like that. Well, you mentioned the team that they hit that grand slam off of, the Texas Rangers. They have been ice cold since that moment, and I expect that trend to continue. They do have their best pitcher on the mound tomorrow, Lance Lynn. He's got a sub 2 ERA, so he's been really good for them. But I'm gonna ride with Oakland. They're a much hotter team. I mean, obviously they have 20 wins, so double the Texas Rangers win total here. But I'm gonna take Oakland minus 140 on the money line against Texas tomorrow. I expect that cold streak to continue, and I don't know. Maybe their manager should focus more on winning than focusing on getting apologies from their opponents.
I like the Oakland play. Minus 140 is a little too steep for me. I'm taking something with slightly better odds. Cincinnati money line minus 135.
Wow, you really saving yourself 5 cents there, man.
I know, it matters. It matters. But I love this Cincinnati Reds play mainly because Trevor Bauer on the mound has been absolutely lights out on fire. He's 3-0, has an ERA under 1 at 0.68. His whip is comparable at 0.57, and he's just been playing fantastic. Meanwhile, the Reds and the Brewers, neither team's really lived up to potential. I mean, away on the road, the Reds are 6-8. At home, the Brewers are 2-6.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Trevor Bauer's been a stud. I gotta think the people in Cleveland, the way Shane Bieber's been pitching, have to be thinking like, "Oh my God, imagine if we had Bauer and Bieber this year." Because a year ago they had him until the Yasiel Puig trade. So uh, those would have been two amazing arms for the Cleveland Indians to have this year, especially with the Plesac and Clevenger thing. So, uh, but yes, Trevor Bauer's been great. So backing him makes a ton of sense. Milwaukee's been up and down all year. You mentioned Cincinnati's been a little up and down, but Bauer's on the mound, so you got to like your chances.
Real quick, did you see Bauer's last start in Kansas City? He was
Yes.
gonna wear the free Joe Kelly cleats, and apparently Rob Manfred didn't like that and didn't allow him to wear those. And then that was also his first time returning to that stadium since he threw the ball over the center field fence, and he was wearing a shirt that represented that. I thought that was pretty cool.
No, he's a fun, I mean, he's an interesting guy. I don't know if I agree with everything he does, but he certainly keeps baseball fun and baseball needs more people like Bauer. They need Tatis out there being fun, young, entertaining. Um Obviously, I'm a huge fan of this kid Kyle Lewis out in Seattle who just keeps hitting home runs. So the young wave of baseball players are fun and exciting.
Yeah, and a few other games that I think you should keep an eye on from Monday. I think Houston hosting the Los Angeles Angels will be a fantastic game at night. I think that the Colorado Arizona game should be interesting. And then also, I would say Minnesota Cleveland.
Yeah, Minnesota Cleveland, good pitching matchup there. Aaron Savali versus Kenta Maeda, so that should be a good one. And you know, Kansas City, St. Louis is going to be interesting. Jack Flaherty makes his second start on the year, so another name to watch on the mound.
Absolutely. Let's jump into Moneyline Magic, though, Brett, because we actually have two NBA games to talk about because it has been a thrilling weekend. We'll start with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets because that was a Saturday night game and it was almost a buzzer beater layup by Chris Paul, but he missed it. It just fell off the rim, and instead they went to overtime. And this game was just as entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Chris Paul layup. I want to actually talk about the three before the layup from Shai Gilgeous Alexander. Man's a second year player and hits that shot in a playoff game. Good for him. Cold blooded shot. Obviously, they would go up one. Houston would hit a free throw, and that would set up the Chris Paul missed layup. But then in overtime, when Harden fouled out, kind of let some of the air out of the building. But really impressive effort by Oklahoma City there to fight and get a win in that series.
Harden also took a pretty hard fall at the end of the fourth quarter when there was an inbound, and Harden and Chris Paul got in a little bit of an entanglement, I guess you could call it.
Oh yeah, that was a really interesting play. That's a great point, Higgins. That was they were talking about it on the broadcast for a while. I don't know how you call that a foul on one or the other either.
Hmm.
Doris Burke and Mark Jones, I believe, were the two on the call, and they mentioned the double foul. Maybe I would have liked to have seen it gone that way, but then Harden fouls out in regulation, so who knows?
And then let's talk about this other game, Luca's performance on Sunday night. Oh my God, this kid.
He is truly special. The youngest 40-point triple double ever, I believe. And that shot to seal the game at the buzzer was unbelievable. Talk about cold blooded. Mike Breen gave him the bang, bang, the double bang from Mike Breen.
Oh,
So it was a huge shot, an unbelievable game to tie the series up. And also respect to Montrezl Harrell and Luka Doncic pregame clearing the air. I thought that was a very cool moment. And I think honestly the country kind of needed it.
Luka Doncic went 43 points, 17 rebounds, 13 assists for his triple double. And remember, this is a guy that just got an MRI on his ankle the other day because he rolled it. So that was interesting and a very strong performance by a 21-year-old that is just taking over this league.
I mean, he was unbelievable down the stretch. We're so focused on the buzzer beater shot, but the layup right before that with the spin move and the bum ankle, it was really an incredible performance on Sunday by Luka Doncic, and he's actually had back-to-back triple doubles. So the kid is just on fire.
But Brett, we just mentioned Montrezl Harrell and Luca clearing the air. Kyle Lowry also injured his ankle in that blowout win for the Toronto Raptors. And then some bad news out of Philly getting swept. I mean, they didn't have Ben Simmons this entire playoff series, basically. And how much do you think that hurt him?
I think it hurt. Obviously Ben Simmons is one of the better forward guards in this game, but Joel Embiid had some interesting comments after the game. There's obviously going to be a lot of uncertainty in Philly. To think they lose on four bounces a year ago, and then this year they lose in four games, that's tough. Brett Brown got the Sixers through one of the toughest periods ever for a professional sports franchise. The front office, excuse me, was actively trying to lose games. It ended up resulting in Jahlil Okafor, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons. Jahlil's since played for a few teams. He looks a lot better now than he did in his rookie year. I'll say that, but um, it really begs the question: is the process over? Personally, I think the process ended 2 years ago when they tried to continue it a little bit with Colangelo, but then he started tweeting, and that I think is where the process ended when they handed the reins over to Brand. Made those trades for Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris. It's sad to see what happened to the Sixers, a team that was in the running for LeBron James 2 summers ago. Now looks like they may be in rebuild mode, Higgins.
I agree. It's been hard. We also saw the rift between Embiid and Simmons just continue to grow this season, it seemed. And I think it might be rebuild mode again for the Sixers. I don't know if that means trading everyone away and going full teardown rebuild like what they kind of had to do before they got all those first round or top picks, but we'll see what the where the road leads the 76ers. But let's jump into these picks, Brett.
Yeah, let's do it. Milwaukee Orlando's the first game tomorrow. I think it's pretty foregone conclusion that Milwaukee's going to win that one. It's just a matter by how much. They're 13.5 point favorites right now. But the game I'm more interested in is Houston OKC. Houston is 3 point favorites in this one, coming off their last game where it was the thriller we just talked about. Shai Gilgeous Alexander hitting a big corner three, Chris Paul missing the layup, but the OKC Thunder were able to pull it out in overtime. Higgins, what caught my eye in this, the over under right now is 219.5, and that is way too low for these two teams. I am taking that over.
I agree. I think that over at 219.5 is kind of representative of if the last game didn't go to overtime, that over wouldn't have hit. And I think not having Russell Westbrook on the court for the Rockets has definitely impacted this over under. But hopefully we can see Russ get out there pretty soon. He's being the sideline coach right now. He's still on the court for them in that capacity. But we all know we want to see him driving down the lane.
Yeah, Russ has been a great cheerleader, but I'll tell you who's impressed me I won't want to say the most because Lou Dortz has been very impressive on the defensive end on Harden, but Jeff Green, a renaissance man. I mean, he looked unbelievable in that last game. Oklahoma City couldn't stop him, but Harden fouling out in overtime, that was the real difference, in my opinion.
And then the game that I'm going to be on, Brett, is the Indiana versus Miami Heat. Now, this is for the Pacers to not get swept. I'm thinking that maybe there's a chance that Miami overlooks it and Indiana can steal this game, but I'm not confident enough to really take either side in this game. But what I am going to take is the over 216.5 because if Miami does come out there easy, Indiana could go put up 120, 130 points potentially. Or it could be a very hard fought game where the Pacers end up challenging Miami and it turns into a showdown in the fourth. And I think 216.5, it's going to be the lowest over under of the day on Monday. And I like taking that over.
Yeah, I mean, these games have been competitive, I feel like. Now, Miami's won all three of them, and I think they would have covered the six in all three, to be honest, as well.
Yes.
I know they've
Miami won by
covered,
12, 9, and 9.
yeah, so I know they've covered whatever the spreads of those individual games are. So that has me a little nervous to take Indiana. I have not taken Indiana yet, but plus 200 on a money line in a do or die game, it's enticing. I don't know if I'm going to take it. I could see myself putting a half unit on it, though, as we get closer to game time.
And just to put in perspective, Indiana has recently won against Miami because their last regular season game in the bubble before the playoffs started was against the Heat, and the Pacers won that game 109-92.
Yeah, I'm sure some people sat out for Miami, like Jimmy Butler
Yes.
probably didn't play. So,
Yes.
so maybe that contributed, but I don't know. That plus 200 do or die seasons on the line, it's enticing. I'm staying away for now, but I could see a half unit getting thrown there as we get closer to tip off.
And then you already found a line out for Tuesday's game between Dallas and the Los Angeles Clippers.
I did find a line for Tuesday, but I have one more pick on Monday, Higgins. There's a
Ooh, not trying
Lakers
to get ahead of myself. I'm
there's a
sorry.
Lakers Portland game in your home, well, not in your home state, but your home state team. I'm gonna ride Portland plus 7.5. I think that line's too big. I think Portland is a tough team. Dame, CJ, Melo, those guys can get hot. Nurkic. So one of them gets hot. Lakers win by 3. I win. So I'm gonna take that 7.5. That just seemed like a big number. But Dallas, LAC, they do have their lines out for Tuesday on FanDuel right now. Um, we should note Porzingis is still questionable for that game. He's supposed to get an MRI on his knee. So we'll probably have more information later on Monday about that. But right now, before any of that info's out, Dallas is plus 6.5. And the Clippers are minus 270 on the money line. Dallas is plus 220 on the money line. I don't know. Those numbers seem big. Dallas just upset the Clippers without Porzingis.
Now, do you know, is this the same knee that Porzingis has had issues with in the past?
I'm really not sure. That's a really good point as well, Higgins. He has had knee injuries, so it might be a bad trend for him, to be quite frank.
Because I thought I saw that this wasn't the same knee, but I know from having knee injuries in the past that going through that often makes your other knee overcompensate and you can get that other knee in trouble. So hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully his MRI shows no significant damage like Luca's MRI that he had on his ankle, and Dallas can go at it full strength. But only time will tell. But there is also some NHL going on, Brett, and I do have a pick on Monday night, and it's going to be in the game between the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Islanders. I think this should be a fun series.
I was excited when I saw you place this bet because I like when you take your hometown teams, Higgins. It just brings a smile to my face. It's like, all right, Higgins wants him to win. He's gonna watch the game. Go Flyers. Here's $10.
Yep, I'm taking the Flyers money line at -120, and Carter Hart really just impressed me in that final game. He's impressed me so far by a lot, but this is going to be interesting because you found the over under on FanDuel over in New Jersey at 4.5. I found it in Oregon at 5. They're not expecting this to be a high scoring game at all. I kind of agree. I think whoever gets the first goal might get the momentum to get this win. But I just really like the way the Flyers have been playing. And even without Niskanen, who got suspended for that hit, I think the Flyers are going to be well off enough compared to the Islanders, who have a banged up Boychuk and a banged up Clutterbuck.
Yeah, I might play a player prop on this game. I might take Kevin Hayes over a half point. Now the player props aren't out yet, so I'm guessing on that line at a half point. It could be a full point. That's usually where the number lies between point 0.5 and 1. Um, I don't know. He's a former Ranger, so I root for him a little bit. He's been really freaking good this year for the Flyers.
That line has been fantastic.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where the Ranger fan in me, like the Flyer fan in you, might just go root for Kevin Hayes to put up a point tomorrow.
Now, this is something that is worth noting. The Flyers in the regular season did not beat the Islanders once. They were 0 for 3.
Oh, well, go Flyers.
Go Flyers. The other game that's going to be going on is that Dallas Colorado game that I won on my over last week on. And that over under set at 5.5 right now. I could see myself finding myself on that over potentially, but not right now.
Yeah, these are two really good teams. They score a lot. Um, yeah, I'm staying away from this one because again, there's so many other sports on. I don't think I'm gonna watch the late night hockey game, but if I do end up staying up for it, I could definitely see myself getting on that over action.
It'll be a little easier for me to stay up for that game than you, Brett.
A little bit. You have a 3 hour advantage there, a little 3 hour advantage, but easier for me on the early end, I guess. So I get all
I,
those noon tip offs.
yes, you do. Let's jump into the NFL though, Brett, because Earl Thomas might be going bye bye in Baltimore.
Yeah, that was quick, wasn't it, Higgins? 3 days ago in a training camp fight and gone. He got 22 million for his 1 year there, so I guess it was a good stop.
Yeah, that this news was very surprising to me. I mean, I heard they were looking to trade or release him. Obviously, they found there wasn't much interest in trade, but probably because of the contract size. So he gets released. I'm sure Earl Thomas will find his way onto another team, but there's probably going to be a suspension or maybe that comes from the league that affects that.
I gotta think that wild story we heard in the offseason may have played into this because, I mean, the Jets had two training camp fights today and, or excuse me, on Sunday, and no one, was released. So I just feels like there was more to this than a training camp scuffle. Like, And again, we haven't seen what exactly went down. We saw Earl Thomas tweeted a video of prior to the fight, the blown coverage that like led to the fight. And again, I'm just speculating here, but it feels like we're not getting the full story.
Could have already been on thin ice with something else. You're right. There could be some other aspects to this that we are not currently seeing. Um, some NFL training camps are being shut down due to false positives, though, too.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge problem. There was a testing facility in New Jersey where 77 tests were brought back as false positives, excuse me, to multiple NFL teams. We saw the Bills involved, the Jets involved, the Steelers involved. That's problematic. I'm glad the NFL caught it before the season started because could you imagine holding all these players out on a Sunday day of game? All the roster moves you'd have to make for your fantasy lineup, your DFS, your gambling. It would have been a nightmare. Some of the players that were involved, like Josh Allen, for instance, the Bills' starting quarterback, was one of the players involved in this. So it is. It's something that America as a whole, but definitely the NFL needs to make sure that their tests are accurate.
Yeah, there were 11 teams involved with this whole COVID test in the New Jersey lab. The NFL's looking into it. I think it's obviously something that you need to look into before the season starts right now, but it'll be interesting because if there are positive tests on a Saturday, the day before a Sunday game, does does the team get to play? Like, it's going to be interesting. We've seen how this has gone with the MLB of series getting canceled as they wait for confirmation of what players are actually positive, which ones aren't. It's going to be interesting with the size of these NFL teams on whether or not they're going to get to play or not.
Yeah, and you and I have spoken about this before, but it's just going to be a season of roster moves. In every league, in Major League Baseball, in the NFL, there's just going to be more roster moves than you've ever seen in your life. And I kind of love how the Saints have three quarterbacks they can turn to because the Jets maybe have one.
Depth
We're
is going to be a all-time high in terms of like the Saints with three quarterbacks that can all go in there and run that playbook. I think is a very very smart call. Teams that have depth at their position at their player positions or skilled positions, I should say. Those are the teams that I think will find themselves in the running at the end of the season because we are going to have positive cases in the NFL. If the MLB has shown us anything, it's going to happen in the NFL as well. Especially if you're traveling and doing all this stuff, it's just going to be a fact of the matter.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something I'm considering for my fantasy drafts. I'd love to get your opinion on it, but like, okay, so I think the Atlanta Falcons, the Kansas City Chiefs, uh, maybe you can throw the Buccaneers in there, the Arizona Cardinals. Those are teams that are going to throw the ball a lot this year. Is it more valuable to target late round picks on those teams and like kind of just stack up? So let's say you draft Tyreek Hill, you just start drafting Chiefs wide receivers and you hope for the best, or do you think you still are going to spread it around like you normally do and try and cover all your bye weeks and maybe not have the same depth on the Kansas City Chiefs on your fantasy roster, but have a Chief, have a Falcon, a Buck.
Well, I think I would spread it around and try to limit how many players of the same team I have because if a game gets canceled, that would turn into a direct loss.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm so nervous to have a guy like, a Julio Jones or a Tyreek Hill, right? And then not have their backup. Like that scares me. Like I almost feel like if you draft Julio, you need to draft Calvin Ridley, and then you need to draft the third guy because you're so invested in the top two. Like it's really something I'm struggling with, and I'm debating more and more. I am leaning that I would want the depth from the teams that I think are just going to throw the ball around, but I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. Just spread it around because if a team gets sick, who knows?
Well, I think it definitely comes down to whether or not it is going to result in players being quarantined from their teams, but the team still being able to play, or if a player tests positive, that entire team has to quarantine and does not play that week. Because if the entire team gets shut down based off of a few players testing positive, then having the backups, to your point, doesn't really do anything. But if you spread it around, that way you are able to mitigate your losses in a sense. But if you are right and it's only the players getting quarantined, then having the backups, I would say, is absolutely an advantage.
So this is why we should all wait till week 8 to draft, right? Because then we'll
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Then we'll know who has it. Okay. So everyone waits till the halfway point of the season and then do your fantasy drafts.
And if we'll talk about fantasy drafts, do you draft Cam? Who's the quarterback in New England?
I don't know. It's been an interesting week of reports from New England, specifically from Mike Reese, who I think most people recognize from ESPN. But basically, he's been saying equal snaps among the three QBs in New England. That's Brian Hoyer, Stidham, and Cam Newton. He
Do you
said
expect
no.
anything different from Belichick?
Yeah, yeah, right. This is the year Belichick. He's gonna put everyone questionable COVID. But no QBs have flashed, according to Mike Reese. Although, kind of note, Jared Stidham has 6 picks in 4 practices, so maybe that helps Cam and Brian Hoyer out. But yeah, that does not seem like pick Cam Newton very high in your fantasy draft news here.
And then what about in Washington with Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins? I saw a video of them doing a mirrored workout, and Alex Smith has some zip on the ball, and Dwayne Haskins overthrew the receiver. So,
Well, then I guess he has some zip too.
but Alex Smith, can he take that position back?
I'm rooting for Alex Smith, man. That's a really incredible injury to come back from. So I'd love for him to have the opportunity to come back, if especially since that seems to be what he wants to do. Um, but you drafted this guy in the top 20. Like he's probably, unless he's terrible, gonna be your guy at least for the season. And then maybe if you're in the top 5 and he's terrible, you go get Trevor Lawrence or Trey Lance or Justin Fields. You know, I don't know if Alex Smith plays starting quarterback for the Redskins week 1. Maybe he gets in later in the year.
Yeah, I could see that. I want to know. I want to see Alex Smith at least get some snaps in a game. I think the amount that he has come back, he has deserved at least that much. It was an incredible journey that he had in terms of the road to recovery. And I loved the video of his entire family spraying champagne on him when he got the clear and go ahead to continue practicing now. That was really cool.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. That was a nice video.
All right, let's jump into the Levy lock and the pick of the pods before we head on out. And Brett, whose turn is it?
I think I won my last Levy lock. I think it was Boston, correct?
Yes, you did. You
All
won, so
right.
you start.
All right. Honors, baby. I mentioned this pick earlier. Houston, Oklahoma City, over 219.5. Jake astutely pointed out that that would not have hit in the last game without the overtime. That number just feels way too low for me. So I'm going to take the over. And, if I get burned by it because it's a great defensive game, so be it. I think there's going to be scoring between Houston and OKC.
And then the game that I am going to be on for the pick of the pod is Cincinnati Reds at Milwaukee Brewers, and I am taking the Reds on the money line at minus 135, and it's simply because of who's on the mound. Trevor Bauer, he's 3-0, looking for that fourth win. The man has been phenomenal with a .68 ERA. I mean, it's just that simple for two teams that have overall underperformed. The one guy is a hot hand on the mound.
Yeah, I mean, I would back Trevor Bauer in that matchup. That makes a lot of sense. Milwaukee has, at least in my mind, been one of the three biggest disappointments in Major League Baseball this year, I think.
And they're 2-6 at home so far this season, so they got to get a few more wins at home to convince me that it means anything that they're playing in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's got half their wins against the Brewers, so so that's all I need to know.
All right. Make sure to follow us on social media as we give out other picks throughout the week at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page. Like I said, we'll have some more picks before episode 71, which will come out on Thursday. This has been episode 70 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you later.